My precious right hand. What a Canadian immigrant accomplished with God's help after the experts failed. By Peter Hoover, originally of Ontario, Canada. Chapter 3 of 5. Through the Red Sea. In the spring of 1966, I first crossed the Burlington Bay Skyway, a high bridge crossing the end of Lake Ontario. Awesome for a small boy, used to getting about with horses trotting along in front of an open steel-tired buggy. An express bus from Kitchener to Niagara Falls had chosen the new, very modern freeway, the Queen Elizabeth Way. I had never traveled along a freeway before. 2 lanes, or sometimes 3 lanes, going both ways, shockingly high above the water, with the cities of Hamilton, Mississauga, and Toronto sprawled along the shore. Spring had come to Canada. Still cold with a stiff breeze, but the trilliums had popped from the mossy woodlands, and in residential areas the daffodils bloomed. What a glorious day to be alive! And to top it off, I could now bend my elbow again about 3/4 of the way, and what a joy! I could move my fingers again. I found it exciting. My parents, who did not say much, thought of much more than that. Thanks to the mercy of God, I might not end up as a handicapped boy after all. Even though we left the Queensway at Grimsby and boarded a humble school bus, still yellow, but converted to a passenger bus, I did not mind. We drove even closer along the lake, a friendly bald bus driver welcoming every passenger on our frequent stops. Something must have gone wrong with the triangle window beside the driver, entertaining us with a constant whistle, changing tune when we changed gears. Glued to the window, kneeling on my seat with my black hat and oil coat, I suddenly noticed a woman trying to tell me things. She sat right before us. A kind woman, with a dress, a hat with some flowers in it, and a purse. I like to talk with people, but in this case I felt stuck. She could only speak English, and I could not understand her. But Mom, happily, interpreted for us. "Do you see that big ship out there?" She had obviously noticed my fascination with it. "That," she said, "is the SS Empress of Canada, the very last steamer to ply the route between Hamilton, Montreal, and Liverpool in England. Notice the stack," she said. Certainly I had seen the stack with its smoke billowing out behind. "That," my new friend said, "is the last steamer regularly running from Canada to England. All other ships now run on diesel power," she told us. "More and more people are choosing to fly, not sail, to Europe." I watched the ship as long as I could. "What is more," the kind woman said, "my brother works on that ship." Pulling out a greeting card from her purse, she said, "This is a picture of that ship, the Empress of Canada. My brother sent it to me. And now that I think of it, let me rip off the part he wrote, and I will give you the picture. What do you think?" I knew the English words "thank you," and spoke them this time with shining eyes. Well, over 50 years later, I still treasure that card from the Empress of Canada. After we crossed the Garden City Skyway across the Welland Canal, with its long lake freighters, we stopped close to Niagara-on-the-Lake and the familiar sight. Frau Siemens was all the happier yet to see how well I was doing. Bending this way, moving my fingers one by one. "My Zeit! We will have you ready for school, no problem." Full of ships and the sea, I asked her, "How did you come from Russia? Did you come here on the Empress of Canada?" "Oh no," Frau Siemens laughed. "We did not come first to Canada. We came from Bremerhaven in Germany to Buenos Aires in Argentina. Over 2,000 Mennonite refugees sailed across the Atlantic Ocean in 1947. Noticing her slight change of tone as she kept on rhythmically, vigorously massaging my arm, I sensed another story coming. Toward the end of the war, this time the Second World War, We knew we had to flee our Yasikovo Mennonite colony. We had no other option. For several years, German soldiers had controlled our area. Now, after they lost their last battle in Russia, the dreadful Battle of Stalingrad, we knew what to do. The Russians hated us, so we fled with the retreating German army. We left our small place in Hochfeld on Saturday morning, the 23rd of October, 1943. Frau Siemens kept on working on my right shoulder. Hans, not in good health, and our 3 schoolboys, Peter, Franz, and Heinrich, could go with us, but, Frau Siemens, brushing her eyes, we never saw Johann, our oldest son, again. He had already turned 18, and the Germans pulled him into their army, the Nazi army. And der Schmerz war groß. It was very hard. I'm sorry, Mom said. But that was only the beginning of things. Viel Elend und Beschwerden gab es auf der Flucht, ehe wir Deutschland erreichten. So much misery and so many complications we encountered before we got to Germany. It soon started to snow. Many of us had skinny horses with wagons sheltered a bit, with tarps or blankets. But the horses, not getting enough to eat, broke down. They died one by one, and we cut them up to eat. What could we do? And then we had to abandon our wagons and the things that we had brought along. Many died along the way, especially the old and the sick, and we could not stop to bury them properly. Time after time we found the bridges broken down before us. For a while we caught rides with freight trains, but it had turned cold. It rained and then turned to snow. We rode in uncovered freight cars. Frau Siemens' warm, sunny room, the Lebkuchen on the table, and the scent of wintergreen seemed precious, almost like in glory. Then, once we got to Germany, what did we find? Nothing but disaster everywhere, especially in the vast broken-down city of Berlin. The war had ended. The victorious Allies had cut Germany into 4 pieces. More than that, they divided the city of Berlin into 4 smaller zones, controlled by the British, the French, the American, and the Russian armies. Once we got to the city and found shelter in a partially collapsed house, we hoped to find trains traveling west. But that did not work out. We soon discovered we had settled in the Russian zone of Berlin. We saw Russian soldiers everywhere. Then, now working vigorously with my hand and fingers instead of my shoulder, Frau Siemens continued, "The Lord is faithful. The Lord is good. We looked up and told him our plight, our fears, and he sent us help. A German-speaking Mennonite, Hans Kraker, found us in our hideout. We had not known him, but we knew much about his father, Jakob Kraker, a man from Russia, who had come to Germany years ago to preach the good news of Christ. He had written many articles and books. We loved his writings, and now, when we met his son, we praised God together." What could Hans Kraker do for so many refugees in the Russian zone, Mom wondered. Did the Russians know he was there, or what he was doing? Yes, Frau Siemens said, the Russians knew. In fact, they knew far too much. When more and more of us managed to slip out of their boundaries into the British and American zones with Hans Kraker's help, they turned angry and insistent. The rest of the Allies, they demanded, must allow them, the Russians, free access to investigate all refugees in all camps throughout Germany. If they came from Russia, back to Russia they must go. Did the Americans allow this to happen? Mom looked anxious. Yes, Frau Siemens answered. During that time in Berlin, while we lived in the camps, Russian detectives came over and over, demanding the Americans, the British, and the French to turn us over. In these camps and in the Russian zone, East Germany as people came to call it, They captured 23,000 Mennonite refugees, men, women, and children, and shipped them back into communist Russia. Many times, when they came to the Russian border, they stopped the trains, ordering all men and boys out of the train, 13 years old or older. The women and the rest of the children found themselves transported eastward, all the way out to the Asian parts of the USSR, never to see their fathers and big brothers again. Oh, that is dreadful, Mom declared. I could not imagine that happening. But how did you manage to escape the Russians yourself? The Lord helped us, Frau Siemens declared emphatically. Dropping more oil of wintergreen onto her firm, strong hands, she said, just at that time, Hans Kraker met a newly married man from the United States, Robert Kreider. Also Mennonite, he had come to see what had happened with us in Berlin. Oh, I cannot tell you how greatly we rejoiced when he came to see our camp, this time in the American zone. Not long afterwards, another young couple, this time from Canada, also came to us in Berlin, Peter and Elfrida Dick. He had earlier left Russia with his parents and grew up in Saskatchewan, Canada. He spoke both German and English very well. I knew of them, Mom said. In fact, they have come to Kitchener several times and he spoke in a number of churches in our area. That is true, Frau Siemens said. They came to the refugee camps in Berlin right when everything seemed to fall apart for us. The Germans did not like us. They did not want to give us food or places to live. The Russians hated us because we spoke German. The British and the Americans did not want us to settle in their countries. Finally, with the help of Robert Kreider and the Dicks who worked for the MCC, the Mennonite Central Committee, our brothers and sisters of North America managed to charter a large ship to take us away from Europe, far away from Russia and Germany where, the Lord willing, we could live in peace. Daring to interrupt, I asked, where did the ship come from? Was it as big as the Empress of Canada? It was a very large ship, Frau Siemens smiled. It came from the Netherlands. People called it the SS Volendam. But our huge problem, the Red Sea that stood between us and there, was the Russian zone. Would the Russians allow us to travel through their zone to Bremerhaven on the North Sea, where we could board the Volendam? Nobody knew. So, Mom wondered, what could you do? We prayed, Frau Siemens said. We prayed day and night in our distress, and our Father in heaven answered. He allowed us to cross our Red Sea and get to the Promised Land. Thankfully, I now no longer needed to sit on a high stool for Frau Siemens to work on my arm. She had pulled her tea kettle from the stove and set it on the table, squarely beneath her motto on the wall, Our help comes from the Lord. On the evening of the 29th of January in 1947, we all gathered for special prayer as MCC workers tried earnestly to make a deal with the Russians. Would they let us go? By now, our numbers had grown again, drastically. Over 1,000 men, women, and children now packed a few large rented houses. We could not stay here, and God knew that. One of our white-haired brothers, Uncle Sawatsky we called him, said, All right, we have prayed. Now we better prepare for a miracle. He packed his tattered suitcase again, the one he had brought from Russia, and set it beside his bed. I want to stand ready, he said, when the time comes. I caught the excitement in Frau Siemens' face. We prayed, and it happened. Suddenly, in the bitter cold of a January evening, Elfrida Dick received the message. Get everything packed up, now. Have all refugees standing outside along the street, and American army trucks will come to pick you up. Oh, what joy and fear, Frau Siemens said. So thankful to God, yet with so many questions and doubts. Would we make it across the Russian zone? Or would we also get caught and sent to hard labor camps in faraway Siberia? All we could do was trust. Trust God. Mom and I listened speechless. There I stood with our 3 school-age boys, Peter, Franz, and Heinrich. Almost all of the refugees had collected themselves around us, but my husband, who had turned sick and lay in the camp makeshift clinic, would come separately. The trucks came. Army trucks they were, one after the next. Soldiers who could not speak German helped us, quickly, to toss in our luggage and to help our little ones up into the back. We roared off on the snowy streets, bright lights shining, to the Lichterfelde West train station, still in Berlin. Frau Siemens paused, remembering. We loaded the freight train quickly, 50 cars long, and at 3:15 in the morning we took off. Oh, how much we prayed, praying when we entered the Russian zone, praying when we sailed past Russian military posts, all the way until we crossed the border again and rolled to a stop at Helmstedt in West Germany, this in the British zone. You must have danced in joy when you escaped the Russian zone, Mom declared. But do you know what? Look at the clock. Almost bus time. Ach, to be sure, she agreed, startled. But instead of dancing when we left the Russian zone, we fell on our knees to thank God. Oh, we thanked him. We loved him. And very early the next morning we came to Bremerhaven, the port where our huge Dutch ship, the SS Volendam, lay at anchor, waiting for us. 2,306 Mennonite refugees from Russia on board. The sailors lifted anchor and the ship began to move exactly at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the 1st of February, 1947. Where did it take you? Mom asked. Oh, but to catch our bus we must run. Maybe we can talk about it later. Frau Siemens stood on her small front porch, waving to us while we hurried off. Once again, so much to think about, so much to wonder. Does God still do miracles? Most obviously so, I concluded, while looking forward eagerly to tell Frau Siemens' story to my sisters at home. To this day, the story and the faith of those who truly trusted God remains etched in my heart.